if there is money left over, then the of whatever's left over. We don't hold money. We continue to invest that. We won't hold money at UT Dallas. Whatever's left over doesn't stay until the next semester. You're going to get it back. If there is then a balance due, if there is money left over, whatever's left over, we don't hold money. We continue to invest that. But we don't hold money at UT Dallas.
Just sort of repeating, that's just our emphasis on those important points.
But if there is a balance due, then you work with the bursar's office to determine how to pay that balance. Then I can just heads off.
Like Sarah said, the financial aid department disperses your funds directly to your bursar account. We then use those funds to pay your outstanding balance, and that can be your tuition and fees. If you're housing on campus, you'll pay your housing through the bursar's office and your meal plan. The bursar's office and tuition, I'll go back to the tuition, you are going to be placed automatically into what is called a variable tuition rate. We can talk about that a little bit later. If the financial aid that you receive does not cover all of the balance in your bursar account and you still have an amount due, you still have that extended payment deadline of August 31st. But if you cannot pay that remaining amount, or perhaps you've decided not to use financial aid and you want to set up a payment plan and just pay, you will set that up, the payment arrangement, through bursar.UT Dallas or through your student center. We have two payment plans. The first one is the installment plan, and I do recommend the installment plan if you have financial aid. You need to get your payment plan set up by the 31st if your financial aid did not cover all of your balance, and you're not going to pay that remaining balance. And the reason is we do drop students for non-payment. So, as Sarah mentioned, your financial aid does disperse on or around the first day of class. But if you get an email or a phone call from the bursar's office saying you need to pay your tuition, please don't assume that your financial aid already paid. If we've called you, it's most likely because there's been some type of a problem. And by problem, I mean maybe one of the forms that you needed to complete has not been returned. Maybe your hours don't match what financial aid awarded. And what I mean by that is they awarded you as a full-time student, but you're no longer a full-time student. Your financial aid is not going to show up in the bursar account. If you haven't paid your tuition by financial aid or otherwise, we unfortunately may drop you for non-payment, and it's very, very expensive to be reinstated in your classes. So again, the financial aid will show up in the bursar. We will use it to pay your tuition. If it covers all of your tuition and there's money left over, the bursar will process your refund. We do that very quickly. Refunds are usually done within 3 to 5 days if you have a credit on your account. So I don't know if we're going to talk about this later, so I'm going to take this chance now. One of the things that you want to do today is go to your Galaxy Orion Student Center, not the Applicant Center, but now the Student Center. Go to the bursar account tile. As the student, when you log in there, go to the student profile and add your parent as an authorized user. And that way your parent can see the balance, see when the financial aid shows up, make payments on your account, or set up a payment plan. As an authorized user, your parent can also call the bursar's office only and get more information on the account. Being an authorized user in the bursar's office does not give anybody permission to call financial aid and get your information, just the bursar's office.
That's a very good tip, though. I mean, it's kind of, once classes get going, students, you're bracing yourselves. I can tell you seem very ready for this moment. But it's going to feel so busy and chaotic. And so it can be really easy. I know for me, I see voicemails, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, this was from 5 days ago. Oh my goodness. And if it's a scary voice, from the bursar's office, minor panic might set in. Or if it's an email, you go to check that UT Dallas student email inbox for the first time, and you're like, what even is this? There's going to be so many emails in there. The important part of having someone kind of who has your back, if you have a family member who can serve in that role, that's valuable. Or if you feel like, okay, I missed this email from a few days ago, I missed this voicemail, never ignore it. Call and follow up, or email. Yes, use your phone as a phone, okay, not just texting. Call, or you can send an email. Like I said, that graduation help desk at Because a lot of what we're sharing with you, you'll hear these words, you're like, I don't know what installment plan means, like, what is that even? Email us and we can support you in navigating that, no matter what, okay? Because it's a lot of information to take in, but we have student success people in every office. So if you reach out to me with this question, I'm gonna call Julie, or I'm gonna contact Lisa in that office, and they can work with you. This also might affect you if you have a little something in flux too with financial aid going into the next term, your ability to enroll in the next semester. So if you have it completely paid for the current term, you might not be able to enroll in the next semester, okay? If that happens to you, also reach out to us because we can support you in connecting with them to discuss your installment plan and be really creative and ensure that you can re-enroll in that next semester. Very good question. You see why it was so good? It's like 10 minutes just on that one.
So the authorized user over here, is that also authorized user for financial aid, or is that a separate process?
The authorized user for the bursar's office only authorizes you to speak with the bursar folks about the student's account. It doesn't authorize you to see the student's grades. It doesn't authorize you to speak to the Office of Financial Aid about your student's account, even though you are the parent. In order for our office to speak to you somewhat specifically about your student's account, you need to have a certificate of dependency on file with the Office of the Registrar. And so that's under the Registrar's Office forms page, and it will probably say FERPA or FERPA. Or a certificate of dependency, or call them or call us and we'll walk you through it and show you where it is. That form allows our office and the registrar's office to speak to you a little more freely about your student's account. And you know, the question comes often, but it's, I'm paying the bill. Yes, you are. But your student is the one responsible. If you don't pay the bill, the bursar's office isn't going to say, hey dad, hey mom, your kid didn't pay the bill. They're going to say, Johnny, we need that money. And so your student is now the responsible party for everything that happens at the university, whether it feels like it or not, even though it's hurting your pockets. I get that, but that's sort of how you have to look at it. Any communications that we send are going to be to the student. So it's important that you have a relationship with your student, and students pay attention. Be nice to your parents because they're helping to pay for school. You know, it's a team effort. This is not something that, you know, you should, if at all possible, you shouldn't do this alone. This is a team effort. It takes the entire family. It takes this family, right? So all of us too, to get you through the next 4 or 5, however many years. Does that help? So
Well, specifically the parent lesson, right? So that's all on me, and I still have to go through him and do what you said, just so they can talk to me about the parent lesson. I'll remind them that it's, you know, it has nothing to do with the parent lesson.
So there's a question about the Parent Plus loan, and I'm getting, because I get a little antsy sometimes, so there's, not upset, there is the Parent Plus loan. Now, we don't offer that automatically to students in a student package because, and I'll tell you what happened in the past, many years ago, we used to offer it. And parents would accept the loan just thinking, well, they offered it, I need to take this, and it could be $10,000, $12,000, and they really didn't need it, right? But they didn't know. You know, if you don't do this for a living every day, you just don't know. And so we stopped offering it, and when a family says to us, well, we need, you know, to figure out, we need a little extra, and then so we lay out the options. One of those options is indeed a Parent Plus loan. So the Parent Plus loan is a little bit different in that if you are calling to ask about your Parent Plus loan, we can absolutely, as long as you are the borrower, we can respond to your questions about this loan, absolutely. And in fact, for that particular loan, once you've accepted it, let's say that is what creates a refund on the student's account. So all the student's financial aid is paid. Now we have a Parent Plus loan, and there's an extra $1,000. You as a parent can say, and there's a form that says, I want the refund to be sent to me, or I want the refund to be sent to my student. So you do have control over that. So if there's, an extra $5,000 or whatever it is, and you want to set it aside, you have the option of taking that yourself. Or you can let your student have it and they can buy a scooter or something.
No scooters,
no, I'm just
kidding. But have a one, again, that follow-up presentation later today, we'll talk about, kind of the value of loans. It can be intimidating to think about taking a loan. However, if you do it right, it can be a very positive line of building credit as a student, which is a very good thing. And so it is a little bit intimidating, but it can be embraced if done correctly. And so that's just equipping you with the skills that you need. How many of you remember that word, that acronym FERPA from orientation? F-E-R-P-A. Yes, parents get and families get a lot of information about that. But if you have questions and you can't navigate that process, we are all experts in speaking in generalities. So if you call specific to your student, we'll be like, I can't tell you about that student, but what I can tell you is hypothetically, a student in that situation, here's maybe what they would want to do or how a family member would want to handle that. Okay, you see, experts. Okay, next question.
So, just a question, for the payment plans, there's like no interest included, right? I just wanted to check on that. I don't know how that would work specifically.
So we offer two payment plans. One is called the installment plan. The installment plan does not have any interest payment at all. There is a $25 fee to set up an installment plan, but we don't charge interest. Now, we also have something called a short-term loan. And being that it's called the short-term loan, it implies that it is a loan, and we do charge. I think it's 1.25% of the balance that you include in your short-term loan, which is why originally I mentioned if you have financial aid, I really do recommend the installment plan. The short-term loan comes into play when something has gone terribly wrong and your financial aid has not shown up, or a scholarship that you're waiting on did not show up. And the short-term loan helps you to extend your payment deadline another 60 days. So again, you only want to use that. You absolutely need to make sure that your classes do not get dropped. You want to protect those classes.
Adding on to that question, sorry. So the installment plan, if I'm mostly doing it with my financial aid, does it automatically get dispersed by the bursar's office?
I'm sorry, if you're going to pay your installment plan with your financial aid, was that the question?
Yes, because it mostly covers it, except for a bit on the side.
So that is actually a really great question. So the installment plan, we take your tuition. So we're going to say that tuition is $8,000. We're going to divide that into 4 equal payments. Even if you have financial aid on your account, we're still going to divide that into 4 equal payments. But let's say you have $6,000 worth of financial aid. Once you set up the payment plan, we're going to say, okay, $2,000 goes to payment number 1, $2,000 will go to payment number 2, and $2,000 will go to payment number 3, which means the only payment you'll be making is payment number 4. So yes, we will add it to your payment plan, and we will apply it to the payments. And then back to the installment plan, we do call 1.25%, we call it an origination fee. But because it is a percentage of what you're borrowing, it's very similar to an interest rate. So we don't charge it more than once, we don't compound it, we just charge it right off the top.
Thank you. Great questions. Next. Okay. Yes. We'll wait on Jay's mic. And students, be thinking about what you might want to know from our faculty members and from our current student on the panel as well, about kind of just pro tips on navigating those early classes and resources that might be valuable to you, or just tips on building relationships as well. Go ahead.
So my question is, when all of these different, the subsidized loans, the unsubsidized loans come in and you're trying to navigate, okay, like you said, if you've got $8,000 and the unsubsidized covers this X amount, subsidized covers this amount, in essence, are we as parents taking out 2 different loans there, another loan to cover the now it's like, it's so confusing. So
Yes, it is.
that's my question.
It is, and it's job security for us. Keep it complicated for a reason. When you're talking about financial aid, whether it's grants, scholarship, loans, for us, it's basically all in one pot, okay? So, and just by the way, especially in a first-time borrower who is accepting a subsidized or an unsubsidized loan, they have to take some extra steps, 2 more. So it's one is accepting the loan. Okay? And so what we recommend is if you have financial aid, whether it's loans are considered financial aid, so whether it's loans, grants, scholarships, let those funds disperse before you do anything else. You don't have to make a payment. You have an extended payment deadline of August 31st. We should have dispersed all of your funds by August 31st, certainly well before. As I said, we will start probably a couple days before the 21st, which I think is when classes begin, okay? Let that happen. That's why we have an extended payment deadline. Let the dust settle, let all the financial aid that is supposed to pay, and then you will see what's left over. So let's say there's $2,000 left over because, it just wasn't enough. Now you can decide, do I want to pay it all right away? Do I want to get a short-term loan, because even if it's 1.2 something percent, because I have something coming in 30 or 60 days, and we just say, well, that's it, I don't want to pay anything. You don't have to. You can do a short-term loan. Or you can do the installment plan, and then that actually pushes it out even further because the financial aid has paid the first, second, and possibly even third installment, right? And so that's just wait. And maybe maybe you don't have the Parent Plus one and find that you might need to borrow additional funding, then we'll decide that then as well, right? And if we're talking about loans and you're not sure or don't really need to borrow anything right away, don't, right? There will be time. You might decide in the spring, I think we need additional funds. You can do that. And the same thing, not just with the Parent Plus loan, but with the student loans. The student can decline them, and then if they find that they need the funds or part of the funds in the spring semester, they can request that then. But now none of the loans carry over from one year to the next. So if I said, well, I'm not going to borrow this $3,500 right now, I'm going to wait till next year. It doesn't carry over. There'll be a separate amount offered each year for students who are eligible. So it's sort of, if you use it, use it. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Always only take what you need. And if you need support figuring out what that amount is, depending upon where you're living. I was speaking to a student in Baghdad living on Candy Creek. If, it's a little bit more expensive. Or if you're commuting and you want to account for gas money, you can meet with our Comment Cents program. So that's Comment and then Cents program. And then they will meet with you to set up a budget. And that way you can take that back to your family and your parents and say, okay, this is how much I actually need every semester. And that can make you make really informed decisions in terms of what you take. And you keep hearing reference to August 31st. You'll get your money back August 31st in a lot of cases, right? Classes start the 21st. What do you need for your first day of classes? Students, the answer is books. Oh my goodness, the answer is books, please. We hear from a lot of students that were like, I haven't gotten my refund, so, I didn't buy my books. And I'm like, oh my God. There are things you can do. Reach out to us if you're in a bad situation and you don't have any money to buy those books. Please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. I want you going to class. Okay, go to your first class, that's fine, maybe. maybe, okay. Shouldn't have said that on live stream, maybe, but for your first class, figure out which books you actually need, which the library might have on ebook, whatever it might be. But please buy your books. Do not wait to buy those things, because people like me are encouraging faculty, I'm so sorry to admit this out loud too, to give those quizzes early, to start taking attendance early, so that we can tell how you're doing, so that we can be reaching out to you. Because if you're in general chemistry and you don't have your book and they're trying to see where you're at in the class so that they can adjust how they're teaching or what content they cover those early weeks, calculus, I'm like, yeah, get ready. There will be quizzes early, okay? So make sure you have your books. That's my tirade. You're welcome. Okay. What other, quickly, yes, go ahead.
I'm loud enough, don't need a mic.
Oh, sure.
I am quite confused with regards to taking the course for credit versus audit, right? So I know there is a
Oh, sure.
value of time attached to a course, that is the credit to working, etc. But then in terms of me getting credit for my transfer versus just having, explored.
An audit?
Yeah. So if I'm a full-time student, let's say I am taking 4 credits as credit to meet the minimum qualification.
Sure.
And if there are no other dependencies or any other scholarships in taking more, etc., how many more for audit courses can I go dabble into and not have to pay anything extra, buying again on a per college dependency of, right, just focusing on the base, what's the
Sure.
office fee, right? Can somebody throw some light on that?
Auditing courses is pretty unique. You can answer that if you'd like, Melissa, but that's pretty unique, and you can email us about your specific situation so we can look at it on an individual basis. So when you audit a course, just for everyone else, that means you're attending the class, you can be participating in the class, but you will not receive grades for the course. You're not going to receive a final grade for the class. You're not going to receive credit in terms of contributing to degree requirements. That's what auditing a course is. Go ahead, Melissa.
So, like I said, I've been here a long time. I've also done advising, and so auditing, I believe, if memory serves me correct, it is in the undergraduate catalog. You cannot, first of all, if the class is full, it has to be approved by the professor. You can't just say, I'm going to audit that course. So there has to be space in the classroom. And then your advisor is probably going to, if you're taking 15, 16 hours and you're an ECS and you want to audit a course, they more than likely are going to advise against that. So that's where your advisor really comes into play. But there is a rule that the professor has to sign off on it. You can't just walk in and be like, I'm going to audit this course. So there are some steps to follow. That's in the undergraduate catalog as well.
Perfect, and we'll share that policy with you via email after we kind of check everything out. Yes, very good one.
We have a question from the chat.
Okay, perfect, Derek. While Jay gets that mic over there, we'll go ahead.
Actually, this.
Okay.
So we have a question from the chat that is regarding financial aid again. The question is, what is the last date to make payments? Will the scholarship be applied prior to the deadline, or do we pay the full fee up front and get a refund later once the scholarship fund has been applied?
So for scholarship funds, it's really the same as all other aid. When students are expecting scholarships, as long as we know about it, they will have an extended payment deadline of August 31st. So August 31st is the last day that you have either to pay or set up some type of payment plan. No payment needs to be made by you before that. You will have time to have those scholarships applied to the student's account. If there's a scholarship coming and it's not here and it's August 30th, contact us or contact the bursar's office, because at that point there's a deadline, and the bursar's office has no choice but to get payment or drop a student from their classes. So something has to be done. Oftentimes what we do at that point, if there's a scholarship coming in and we have no information, or it is that 31st deadline, is we suggest the student get on an installment plan. That right there keeps the student in their classes, and we have extra time to wait. So those are the things that we work with you on as needed.
Now, students, this might be a trick question, real quick. How many of you intend to apply for scholarships while you're here? Okay, because I said it was a trick question, you knew that the correct answer was to raise your hand. Yes, the correct answer should be yes. Because every year you should think about funding your education as a unique point in time. Because what you have available to you could change, right? Your circumstances could change, in which we want you to reach out to the Office of Financial Aid if that happens, job loss, or a death in the family, or whatever it might be. But as a student at UT Dallas, you're all here for a reason, and that's because you earned the right to be here, correct? You worked very hard for that. So once you get here and you establish yourself academically, you start building connections immediately in those early classes with your faculty and with staff like myself and Derek. We expect you and can support you in applying for scholarships while you're here. It will build your resume, looks good, right? Honors and awards section on your resume, right? Doesn't hurt that it can support your education too. We also have fundraised for first generation student-specific scholarships, which further narrows that pool, right, of students who are applying for those awards. But we're happy to sit down with you, and it takes just a minute, and those applications occur January, February, early March. Be looking in that spring semester for that next fall scholarships, okay? And we can talk you through. We have a video on our YouTube channel about writing an essay and what that looks like, how to request references. We're happy to support you in that process, okay? All right, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just have actually two different questions. I know that when you get your Comet ID card, that you can put funds onto that card to use on campus. So say at the end of the year, you have monies left over. Is that refunded, or is it just held to the next year?
That's a legitimate question. I'm not looking at one eye like, does anybody, what? But I do believe that it stays on there. I think it might vary if it's specific to meals. Like if you load X amount of dollars, of the food dollars, oh my gosh, I can't even think of that word.
Well, it would just be funds, like if
Oh,
she
just
needed to go
in
to the
general?
bookstore, or
Okay.
if she needed to eat while she was, like, whatever.
Yeah, we can find the answer to that and get back to you. I know I can find it online in about 5 minutes. And so I'm gonna get my laptop out while you get your plate of food, and I will answer that question, and we'll post the answer in our chat too. That's a very good question. Okay, so, oh, do you know the answer, our amazing student? Oh my God.
No, excuse me. So I don't actually have money in there, but I am a JSOM student, and JSOM does give you like $50 worth of money to do things like prints at the computer lab here, and it doesn't replenish or anything, but it stays there over year after year after a semester and things like that.
Yeah, perfect, so we can look, yeah. Okay, we'll take a look at that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
second question, is it as hard? Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna say. So I'm just curious about incoming students and like intern fellowships or work study programs within their study field, and like how that works, how you would figure out that.
Sure, I can cover internships, and we can all kind of maybe even pass around that, internships and externships and job shadowing. And then we'll let financial aid talk maybe about federal work study, if that's been a part of your financial aid package. Sarah can address that. And actually, we were just talking about internships and the other student. So our amazing University Career Center, so if you go on to UT Dallas homepage, you type in UCC, another acronym to add to your jargon dictionary here, UCC, that's University Career Center. You can start looking for internships, even though you're all first-year students, as early as right now, literally. One of the handouts you have is the Capital One First Generation Student Internship Program, because it is never too early to start getting that job experience related to your major, not related to your major, because every experience you have at UT Dallas and outside of UT Dallas is going to be helping you make informed decisions post-graduation, right? So it's never too early to start working with them. What you'll do is as a first-year student, you'll start transitioning that high school resume, right, to a look more college resume, okay, to a big transition. And so meet with them. They offer one-on-one appointments virtually, in person, and they do host drop-in hours. The career fair comes up in early September. That might seem crazy, but that is when a lot of companies, even now, we just heard some companies are recruiting summer interns now for next summer. It's still summer now, but they're looking for next summer already. It sounds crazy, but that is real. So internships and job shadowing, We do what's called the World of Work, the WOW program on spring break too, in the spring semesters. That's where you get assigned a company or a person to job shadow during that week of spring break. There's a lot of great, that's called experiential learning opportunities available, and it's never too early to start doing that, and it's so important. And Derek and I will be hosting a series of events. I think it's the second week of September, so keep an eye on your email. Because we'll do how to prepare for the career fair, and then we're actually going to do a site visit to State Farm, which hires a ton of UT Dallas undergraduates at really, really good salaries post-graduation locally, and you can go and start applying for those internships too after you build those connections on that site tour. But you want to talk a little bit about federal work studies, Sarah?
So Federal Work Study is a need-based program, and so if a student has this offer on their, as part of their financial aid, usually we'll award up to $5,000 depending on what is available. If you have a financial, a work study offer in your packet, it does not mean that we're going to give the student $5,000 or whatever the amount is. It is an opportunity to earn up to that amount under this program, this financial aid program. What is the benefit? The benefit of Federal Work Study, the equivalent for offices is that they only pay 25% of the student's salary. The federal government pays 75%. So the department saves some money, and the federal government helps to pay for your student. You as a student worker just get paid every 2 weeks for the hours that you work. It's very simple. There's no negative effect on you. In fact, it's just the opposite. Because it is a financial aid program, it counts as financial aid, so it doesn't count as wages earned. Whereas if you worked outside, wherever at a bookstore, let's say, that's straight wages, and it may or may not matter, but it is something to know. Many of the departments offer Federal Work Study positions. They are no different than regular student positions. So something I always have to remember to say is, even if a student is not eligible for Federal Work Study, they can still apply for and get student employment, right? The jobs are there. There are studies that show that students who work tend to be more successful. Not students who work 30 hours. Students who work maybe 10 to 15 hours a week. It is a choice. It is not an obligation. There are jobs available, but just like scholarship, it doesn't mean that you qualify for every job, right, for every position, so it might take a while to get one. It's just like anything else. I hope that answers.
No, that's great. Good point about kind of work. How many of you intend to work while you're in college for the students? And that's what we thought, and that's what our data tells us. So there is, statistically speaking, we have this data, because that's what we do. We look at it, what's the relationship to GPA? There is a cliff. If you work more than 15 hours, there becomes a negative relationship to your GPA, okay, statistically speaking. So burn that in your brain right now, because when you come into my office and we're having a one-on-one meeting, how's it going? I'm like, okay, what are you doing this semester? You're working, you're a student, or how many hours are you working? And you come at me with 25 hours, we'll have a conversation, okay? Because if it's still going okay, what you want to be mindful of is how much you add onto your plate. There's only so many hours in the week. Parents, we also want them eating and sleeping. It's weird, but that helps, okay? Eating and sleeping, studying, working, student organizations, a social life, if you want one, whatever, you decide, okay? Social life, all over here, you don't want to have an imbalance with your academics, okay? So being very mindful of how much time you're dedicating and where you're dedicating it throughout your career. That's the kind of thing we need if you one-on-one. Yes, please share, and then I'll also ask Selena if you would impart any of your pro tips from a faculty perspective, Melissa, you as well, about building those relationships in that first semester with faculty, because I know when we're around students about it, we're like, get to know your faculty, and you're like, what do? I don't have any questions. It's super awkward. They can share some advice on what that actually looks like in office hours, but go ahead, thank you.
Yeah, so working off what you said about not getting too ahead of yourself and working too hard, I can speak from experience because when I first came here, I was doing all the max classes, a full-time job, everything I could do, and my GPA wasn't hurt too bad, but it was lacking a little bit. Until then, I've gotten better at being more disciplined, more time management. You have to realize that your professors are just not going to be really on top of you. And so a lot of students will complain, but there's plenty of resources for you to get help and all that stuff. Now, going for the internship aspect of when you want to finally start going for internships and all that, there's a lot of resources, especially for those from experience in JSON. They have help with resumes, help with building portfolios, help with your online presence, your personal brand. That's all things you really need to focus on. It gets a lot with your classes, but it's something well worth it. And don't be discouraged whenever you get rejected from internships. It's happened a lot to me, but finally I've gotten a few. And whenever those open, be on top of it, because you're more than likely not going to get them. And whenever you finally do, they're going to tell you, actually, we only have one position left, and more than likely you might just not get it. So.
A way to bring down the room. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
The moral of the story is it's law of probabilities. And so if you apply the same scenario, if you're like, okay, I've identified my 5 favorite internships, I'm going to say, great, what are the other 20? Okay, so it literally takes applying to that many because we're in a very competitive marketplace. Our brand is associated with excellence, and so we're pretty spoiled in that regard. But in the classroom, outside of the classroom, you're going to feel that sense of competition. Don't let it get to you. Be exactly of that mindset. You might not get it, and that's okay, because as a UT Dallas student, the best thing about being in that situation is there are going to be more opportunities. So keep putting yourself out there. It takes a lot of persistence and resilience.
Go to the career fairs.
Go to the career fairs is his big piece of advice. Selena, go ahead.
I have lots of advice, and part of it is, throw lots of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Like during your 4 years here, what you don't want to have happen. So, I teach from the beginning of intro psychology classes, those big lecture hall classes, all the way to the seminar classes with seniors. What you don't want to do is imagine yourself as a senior and you want to apply to graduate school, like you found your passion and you want to apply to this program, maybe you want to be a lawyer, or a doctor, or a professor, whatever it is. We're gatekeepers in ways that we don't even want to be, right? So we have to write these letters of recommendation for students for you to apply to those programs. So you don't want to have to need a time machine when you're a senior to find 3 people to write your letters. And so, for example, if a student asks me for a letter of recommendation when they're a senior and they're applying, I need to know them. Well, how do you get to know your professors? From the very first semester you're here at UTD, you're going to show up to office hours, okay? You should think of those as student hours. Those are hours that we set aside just for you. I'm sitting in my office, eagerly staring at the door, waiting for somebody to walk in and talk to me. And you don't need to worry about how awkward it's going to be. We're just excited to see you, and we'll handle it, right? We're going to ask you questions and get to know you. We're going to ask how it's going. The very best thing you can do. I always tell the story about a student I had who showed up 15 weeks in a row, right? I know everything about him. He's an amazing student. Well, when he was ready to apply for an internship, my letter was like a manifesto. It was so detailed about how they would have so many regrets if they did not accept this wonderful student. And so when I know a student, I'm going to go all out with that letter to say, like, this is a person who's going to be an asset in your program. But show up, right? And he took my class 2 years ago. He still shows up to office hours. So this is someone I'm going to continue to support over the years. And all the students who show up in that way, who show up to class, show up to class. It's really important. Even if we don't take attendance in those big classes, we know who's showing up and who's not, right? Ask those questions and really think about how special this time in your life is to develop professional relationships. Many of us are on LinkedIn. Get a LinkedIn account, right? Go to the Career Center and start building that network now. Obviously, I could talk about this forever, but I'll stop.
No, that's wonderful. I think Live Without Regrets is a really great kind of message to impart, because you don't want to look back and be like, I didn't go to that event because I didn't have anybody to go with me, right? You want to go and push yourself out there and start introducing yourself. I didn't go to office hours because I didn't have questions about the course content. You don't want to have regrets, to Selena's point, right? And so that's a big part. You only get to do your undergraduate career the one time. And so please enjoy it and know that we're here. You can reach out to us for anything. We're at time for lunch, but I want to thank our panelists. Yeah, go ahead, Melissa. Yeah.
I'll keep it short. Kind of backing up with what Dr. Brody said, go to those office hours. Remember, you belong here. That's my piece of advice I leave all of y'all. As a first-gen student, there were many times I didn't think I belonged there. There are still times I don't think I belong in the room. So I have to remind myself of that a lot. And so that is my piece of advice to y'all. You belong here, you belong in office hours, you belong in the classroom. Just keep telling yourself that.
Yeah, and that can sound a little dramatic, but from a lot of people who have that lived experience, you'll be sitting in that classroom and they'll ask if anyone has questions. And you might have a question and no one raises your hand, well, you're gonna be like, I'm not gonna raise my hand, like, why am I be that guy? Yes, you are, okay, because it is okay. If you have a question, someone else has a question. You are not alone in that experience. And don't let anything get you down. Come to our events and programming because we hope that we constantly reinforce how special we think you are and excited we are to have you. And that was the goal of this panel. But our panelists will stick around and answer questions that you might have. And if y'all are welcome and interested, you can stay for lunch and as well and answer questions. And most importantly, thank you in advance for enjoying the lunch and staying for the Capital One presentation. It is all about financial support and advice. And that internship is your first chance to go ahead and start kind of the cheesy cheese networking that we keep talking about, which makes it sound super cool.
Thank you, everyone, and I have some breaking news. I can confirm that the Common Card balance does roll over each semester. You can go to commoncard.utdallas.edu if you want to check that.
Perfect. Y'all go enjoy lunch and you're welcome to come back in here and enjoy. Thank you all.